I'll just bring the snacks. You keep the laughter going. Hey, everyone out there. I'm Jessica Nordhaus, and I use she, her pronouns.
And I'm Lindsey Lathrop, and I also use she, her pronouns. One of my favorite things about Jessica here, who I've been working with for 5 years on gender equity and the Business Peer Exchange, which was our first program together, is her road trip snacks are amazing. So we're doing a lot less travel these days. I wish she could hand me some snacks through the screen, but that hasn't happened yet. But you could have them delivered.
That's true. I'll look into that.
Okay.
For our next virtual road trip.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things about Lindsey is the humor and light that and laughter that she brings to almost every single situation. She is almost. But this is heavy work that we do, and I really appreciate her ability to keep us moving and smiling through it all, through the heavy stuff. Well, light.
You gotta have a sense of humor. Otherwise, you will run the other way.
I agree. So here we are having a conversation on Zoom that's going to go out into the world. And what we had thought is that we really wanted to share with you out in video land a little bit about Genclusive and Genclusive at Work, this project that we've been working on for 5 years, but are now have now relaunched under the brand Genclusive, and give you a sense of our style and what the program entails. So without further ado,
let's get into it.
Let's dive into it. So way back in 2016, Lindsey and I met while we were working together on an initiative called Change the Story, which is an initiative to fast track women's economic security in the state of Vermont. And as part of that work, we believe that engaging employers was really important in making immediate and impactful changes for the women and the men and the people, the humans who work for them.
Yeah, so it was interesting around that time, maybe just a year before, but Vermont Works for Women in our state is one of the best and well-known trainers for girls and women around workforce, personal finance, all good career and life skills. And they had gotten pretty curious about, the experiences of young women in our state. And they found that young women were really seeking mentors. They felt like they had very limited exposure to career opportunities, very limited exposure to personal finance. They felt like they were witnessing a lot of peer aggression. So, not having a lot of support, and also seeing that women were aggressive to other women. And from that work that was called Enough Said, a report was published. It's called the Enough Said report. And while I was serving on that task force, I got to meet Beth Sachs and get to know her. And Beth Sachs is the co-founder of an organization called Vermont Energy Investment Corporation. And Beth is an action taker, and she really wanted to dig into some survey results that she got from the Best Places to Work survey. And what she found is that the women at VEIC were less satisfied with their work experience than the men. And she was really curious to know why. And she was also curious to know whether other employers were experiencing this as well. And so that was really the catalyst to how the Business Peer Exchange was founded. And so that first year, we brought together 12 organizations to talk about gender equity and inclusion as a whole. And from that point, we really spun off and created more of a consultancy and an exchange model where businesses bought in to a group cohort and meeting once a month for a whole year of education. And so that has really been the model that Jessica and I have taken and evolved into what we do today with Genclusive.
And I'm going to do a little foreshadowing here and jump ahead and point out two things. One is that it is the Best Places to Work survey is a really valuable tool. We've had a lot of our clients who have used that and then paid a little bit extra to have the data disaggregated by gender, because it costs money apparently, and to really get a sense of how the women in their organization are perceiving their ability to advance or their safety and security in the organization or their pay. And the other thing is that what we have found so valuable about this work is the cohort model, is the exchange. So a lot of folks that we've worked with have said that that piece, to be able to talk to colleagues and associates across industries or sectors, is really, really amazing. So we've had nonprofits in the room, we've had municipalities, we've had big corporations, we've had little tiny companies and startups. So that part of it has been very valuable to people.
Yeah.
So I just ruined the ending a little bit. Little spoiler there.
Yeah. That's okay. So Jessica, let's share a little bit about our style and how we really see our own roles as two white identified, women identifying, cisgender humans in this work, and how that plays out in how we facilitate and talk about gender equity.
Absolutely. Well, we've been talking about this a lot lately, and Lindsey and I have always taken an intersectional approach to our work, which means that we are well aware that people holding multiple identities experience compounding impacts of bias and discrimination. And the workplace, and now the virtual workplace, is just like the world. That's true everywhere. And so we have these conversations about what two white cisgender women have to bring. And in a lot of times, and in our experience working together over the last 5 years, what we've started to see ourselves as gateway consultants, which means that we help people move in whatever way they're able into inclusion and equity work. And sometimes that's taking little tiny steps forward, and sometimes people are able to dive right in. And really what we're wanting people to do is encourage them, meet them where they are, and then encourage them to look into maybe why some feelings of defensiveness are coming up. And in this instance, I'm talking mainly about white people or white men. But we really want to avoid the shame spiral, because we feel like that isn't helpful or useful. And we do our best to center the voices of women of color, of trans women, of gender nonconforming folks, and looking at all of those layers, which is so complex right now.
I would also piggyback and say this is really hard work. It's ongoing work. It's not like one and done, check the boxes and we did it. And I think because of that, this cannot happen in a bubble. And that gets back to what you were sharing about the exchange piece and why people really do value that cohort model. Some of the folks that we've worked with say that they've never had these conversations with their colleagues before. So thinking about the kind of culture you want to create and the idea that those conversations are now happening, I think is really, really powerful. And I love that word gateway, because that's what we're doing. We're opening the gate for that to happen. So, and I'm happy to give that excuse and accountability for sure. And really, this takes a lot of bravery, because what we know is required diversity training doesn't work, and it often leads to backlash. So here we are, I think really giving people an opportunity to engage in dialogue and to really embrace that compounding effect that we may not even have any idea the impact of that, right? And I'm speaking for my own self and my awakening to a lot of this, and all of the mistakes that I've held and how I've played into that larger system. And I could really get a lot of shame from that. But what I know is that's a game stopper. Like, why get into that mode when I could actually think about, ways that I could actually take action? So I think it would be great for us to share just some of the ways that companies and organizations have taken action as a result of the curriculum and the program that we've designed. Do you mind sharing a bit of that?
I don't. And what folks should know about you is you're all about action. So that's good. Action and accountability. We've had probably over how many members would you say we've had in the last 5 years of
Well,
experience?
we've definitely had over 500 people participate, 35 organizations,
Maybe even more. Yep,
maybe
some
more. Yeah.
repeat and new organizations coming in every year.
Yeah.
So there are a long list of things that folks have done after participating in the Business Peer Exchange. I think from the 10,000-foot view, we've had a whole lot of our members be able to write and publish a diversity, equity, and inclusion commitment statement,
Mm.
and in many cases launched a learning series, in some cases launched employee resource groups or identity affinity groups, and even sometimes working groups to move into action and support action on making their workplaces be more inclusive. One organization we worked with, well, more than one organization we worked with, have created gender neutral bathrooms,
Mhm.
and then posted the explanations in those bathrooms of why and why they're doing it. What else do you have on that list, Lindsay? What are some of your favorites?
Yeah, I would say, we hear quite a bit about recruitment practices and rewriting job descriptions to make sure that they're inclusive and include those DEI statements, and also redesigning websites and marketing materials. One of our jokes is if you're looking at your website and all the women are in the background and they're kind of blurry, you
It's
might
not
want to. It's
Oakland's.
not, yeah, it's not a joke. Well, you need to work on it. That's a free tip. And I would also say that there's definitely been some elevation of women into more senior roles. So looking at that gender or that career clustering that can happen, which can then signal to, if you look at your pay disparity. So if you have a lot of women, for example, working in admin roles, more customer support roles, and you're asking, oh wow, why is there a pay disparity across levels? Like that could be part of it, but you need to peel back the layers to see the full story, and I think that's really what we help you do. So those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, great. We've talked a little bit about leadership, and that is something that's so important in this work, is that you have leaders who are committed, and able to support the work, to drive change, to set the tone and culture. I'm wondering, Lindsay, if you feel like we are still having to help people make the business case, for this kind of equity and inclusivity work the way we were 5 years ago.
No, and honestly, that's probably one of the most refreshing aspects to this work. When we first started, there was definitely some buy-in that we needed to get, and now it's a no-brainer. I think companies definitely understand the reason why we need to have inclusion for all people and really create human-friendly workplaces. This is about making sure that your people have what they need, and understanding that there is probably people missing from that conversation that absolutely have perspectives that you need to hear. And I think having this package and this program to learn beside your peers about what are the missing pieces in people is really, really special and important.
Yeah. And at the same time, there is an economic driver in this. There's an economic imperative. So we see more and more younger workers, millennials, are leaving good jobs for better jobs. And one of the signals, the signs of a better job for them, or a great place to work, is flexibility, or those human-friendly benefits and practices and policies that Lindsay was referring to. So I think that's something to keep in mind. This can be a recruitment strategy. We see that diverse leadership teams actually raise productivity and improve the bottom line in a lot of cases. So there are many of us, and many, many, many more organizations right now are moving toward an embracing of values-driven philosophy. If not the full triple bottom line, then certainly making sure that your values are reflected, that your compensation is equitable, and that you're actively reviewing it every year, and that your compensation philosophy is in line with your mission and your vision as a company. What do we expect from companies and members as they join, and what would an organization need to do to get ready for doing this work in an exchange?
Sure. So in our model, we really want to see teams of 3, and we would absolutely want to know that you have buy-in from leadership. So one of those team members is hopefully someone on senior leadership. And we actually have a lesson in this guest pass around how you can start building your team now. Perhaps you already have an employee resource group that involves inclusion issues, and maybe that's where this lands. If you don't have something like that, you're going to get to design one. And you want to make sure that you are getting a cross section. So you have your 3 people who would participate in the program, and then you can expand out for however many you want to involve. But really what we're looking for is having ongoing conversations and making use of that larger team, because again, it can't just be you and your interest in equity. It really has to be a group of you that's actively working on this. So we will give you guidelines on how to build that, but that is absolutely one of our expectations. And the other expectation is that you are learning, but you're actually doing something with that learning. So you will set a goal at the beginning and actively work towards that with we call it a gender equity team.
Mm-hmm. And you'll be working on a gender equity plan. We're not asking you to change everything, but we are going to ask you to make some changes, and we're big on accountability structures. So we want you to have that internal team to hold one another accountable, but we are also there to help support you in those decisions and the goal setting, and then understanding what are your metrics, what will success look like, and how will you know that you're there, and then how will you know what the next step is that you need to take.
Yep.
I do also, it leads me to another question, which is, here we are, all of us sitting in this little box on our screen. So how can folks expect this to work? Is it, you have 6 meetings, and is it a lot of talking? We talked about exchange, but do you want to talk a little bit about how we really foster that exchange, even virtually?
Sure. So when you participate, you'll get access to our signature course, which is called Genclusive Work. So you will actually have all of the content beforehand. We drip out the content as we go through the course, but the modules will be available to you. And that will really be your homework in preparation for the time that we spend online. So we'll meet on Zoom and have both a combination of things. So we might bring in a speaker. We might have you be a speaker. You will have team time with your group, so we can actually have you go out into breakout rooms. We can also team you up with other member organizations that we think would be a good match, and perhaps you're working on something that's very similar. What else, Jessica? What else would you say?
Well, in terms of outside the actual meeting time, we've had members who have set up lunch and learns immediately after our sessions, so that they can go back and debrief and share what they're learning, take it back to other members of their community and their organization. And they found that really helpful to help expand the learning as well. So there are lots of ways that you can bring in other folks to the work. And we are also really open to experimenting with polls. We just ran a workshop this morning where we had sort of some flash surveys and polls, and other ways for people to help share and stay engaged in the work. Yep. All right. Well, that gives you a really quick overview. I hope you got a sense of what our facilitation style is like. I hope you got a sense of what Genclusive exchanges and Genclusive at Work might entail. If you are interested in learning more, please reach out and get in touch with us. There is a lot of information on our website, genclusive.com, and we have posted when the next exchange is going to start up, but we're always happy to entertain an email from you folks out in the world, and let us know what's on your mind.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, Lindsay.